If you remember anything about it, just remember that. All the working class has to do to beat the rich is to keep his hands in his pockets. Because without that man digging the field, digging in the mine, making the product in the factory, there's nothing. There is no economy. But if you believe the opposite, you've been propagandized over the course of your life to believe we're the elite. Remember what we were saying about the elite? I don't use that word in that context. These people are not elite. They're just rich and fucking greedy bastards with it. Tolkien dragons sleeping on piles of gold and rubies. That's what they are. Hoarding their wealth. Fuck them. Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast, number 31. And I'm doing this on Tuesday. I promised that I would get these out more regularly. And so far, I'm good to my word from last week. If I just keep this up for the rest of my life, I will have fulfilled my promise to you. So, welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 31. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to talk about Brexit because there have been developments with that and with regards to, Ireland and everything. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the coronavirus, the British left and United Ireland again. I don't really want to talk much about coronavirus, but it's the biggest thing going on at the minute, isn't it? And so I kind of have to touch on it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to give anybody advice. I'm nothing like that. I'm just going to talk about our management of it. So, on with the podcast. Let's do this. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Excuse me. Lovely. So, okay. Brexit. Now, what's happened? This is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the British government saying that thing that they're going to break the law in a limited and specific way thing, right? So, how am I going to get into this with you? Oh, okay, I'll come at it like this. There's a journalist I follow called Naomi O'Leary, and she is one of the two people that do a great podcast called The Irish Passport. If you don't listen to The Irish Passport, I recommend you do. It's brilliant. It's one of my favourites. In the meantime, she I think she lives in Holland, the Netherlands, and in the meantime, she's been made since she started this podcast a few years back. It's fantastically researched. The way they do it is just absolutely brilliant. Tim, her podcast partner, is his history teacher, professor, I think, in Paris, and she's a journalist based in the Netherlands. And the podcast is just fantastic. They cover they cover everything from Irish language to Irish foreign policy, diplomacy, the European Union, domestic issues, the 12th of July, the North, the border. They just cover everything. It's absolutely fantastic. But it's really well researched and really well done, and I'm a big fan of her. And she, I was listening to her, I think it was on her podcast. I tried to find this for you, but I couldn't find the actual, the piece of audio that I was thinking about. But she spoke about there being a Westminster bubble when it comes to Brexit and Ireland. And you see, obviously us living here in Northern Ireland, and in Ireland in general, Ireland gets a lot of UK news. So we see that's not being reported. I watched a few weeks back, I think it was Newsnight or something like this, and they had a panel talking about Ireland and the border, and there was no Irish people on it. It was all people that live in London, all this Westminster bubble, these journos that are, that just live in this bubble, for want of a better word. And there was no Irish people on it. There was no Irish people that's on talking about the border or what it means. It was around this time that the law was announced live on TV that it was going to be broken and limited in a specific way. So Naomi O'Leary, she said she talks about this, and I think she's absolutely correct. And one of the ways that this bubble is this ignorance is expressed is through the talking points thrown up by I call them far right, so the ERG people, the European Research Group within the Tory Party, the Mark Francois, although Nigel Farage isn't in the Tory Party, but characters like that, Andrew Bridgen, characters like that, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson himself, and they talk to each other, and they don't contradict each other. So I'm going to play a little short clip of video, and this is by a character called Andrew Bridgen. I thought it was Mark Francois. These pug-faced little bastards all start to look the same to me after a while. Does that make me a racist? But I tweeted out that it was Mark Francois, but it isn't. It's a equally despicable cartoon called Andrew Bridgen. So I'm going to play this. Now, this is a clip of him on Sky News. And he's being interviewed by Adam Bolton, who is their main anchor on Sky News, right? Now, listen to what he says. You would literally need to be living on top of a fucking mountain to not know that this man is completely incorrect. But it's the way he's not challenged. And this is what Naomi O'Leary's talking about when she says about that Westminster bubble. The fact that this character, who's a major player within the Brexit campaign, and he's a no-deal Brexiteer, and the fact that he can go on, say this, and the main anchor on Sky News doesn't challenge him. So have a listen, tell me what you think.
European Union are desperately seeking to avoid is the good people of the Republic of Ireland, who are still in the European Union, looking across a virtual border into the Northern Ireland, a land of milk and honey, where we've got free trade deals with countries around the world, including the USA, which is the Republic of Ireland's largest trading partner, that they can't join into, because what they know is that the Republic of Ireland will be leaving the European Union very, very quickly. Even faster, if the EU enforce a hard border.
So you believe the Republic of Ireland is going to leave the EU?
If we get out of the European Union, we can do free trade deals. It will be irresistible for lots of reasons.
So let's just recap what this clown has said. The Republic of Ireland is going to be desperate to leave the EU. Sorry, I'm just tidying some stuff up here. The Republic of Ireland is desperate to leave the EU. That is just not true. It is just not true. No one can say that. It's so untrue. It's laughable. Ireland, I think, is the most pro-EU member in the EU. Despite the fact, and I know the EU's not, and I'm not, listen, I've got my issues with the EU as well. I'm a socialist. The EU's not socialist, it's neoliberal, but it has done good things. It has done some good things. It's prevented war for a start. But Ireland has, although we've been screwed a lot by the Troika and things like that, and we've got our fucking issues, there's no two ways about it. Ireland went from being technically sort of a third, not in the 70s, like a third world country, really, second world definitely, into being what it is now, which is a modern, forward-looking leader, almost. And the idea that Ireland wants to leave the EU is, as I've said, just laughable. There's a headline here. This is from 2018. And for those of you listening to the podcast, come over to the YouTube, like, share, subscribe, do the whole thing. This is from the Irish Times. Now, this is I thought this was 2018, but I think I'm reading there. It's 2020. Tuesday. Oh, that's from today. Is it? No. No, it's not. Sorry. It is. It's from 2018. There's it there. So, this is an Irish Times headline. It says, more than 90% of Irish people want to stay in the EU, poll reveals. This poll would have been done in conjunction with what was going on in the UK at the time. And idiots like this going on the news channels and saying things like this, so a poll would have been conducted. Now, the Irish Times is what it is. It's the establishment newspaper of choice in Ireland. It's very pro-EU and all this sort of stuff and all the rest of it. So there may be a little bias there, but it doesn't mean that the point they're making isn't credible, because it is. It's completely credible. These polls have been conducted over decades, and they never waver below 80%. Ireland is very, very, very pro-EU. We like being a part of the EU, right? It's not, and this is the thing. Anybody that listens to politics, that does politics, that comments like me, comments on politics, that reads newspapers and follows the Brexit debacle and all this stuff, we know this. This is, the fact, if you're listening to this, you know this. I reckon you know this. That this is, that what that clown said is so wrong. Even having to go and look for a headline to contradict them it's almost pointless, because he's so wrong. But the anchor on the news show doesn't contradict him. And that's the bubble. So he can go on to Sky News, get interviewed by the Sky News anchor, Adam Bolton, say something that is laughably false, and in the process completely misleading their viewers and their listeners. They're gaslighting the people that they're supposed to serve, which is their viewing audience, lying to them. And he doesn't, and that news anchor doesn't say, no, you're so wrong. Get out of here. You're just lying now. This is propaganda. This is what people accuse North Korea of being. Things like this. The news anchor just sitting there smiling, blithely just playing along to this politician talking complete shite. Right? So that's the Irish Times. Now, this happened the other day as well. So this is the Daily Express headline, and I know the Daily Express is not a credible source for news. It's the only one worse than it is the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail is so bad that you're not allowed to cite it as evidence to an article, not allowed to link to an article in it on Wikipedia. That's how bad it is. The Express is pretty much the same. In fact, I wonder, is it the Express that I'm thinking of? So, this is a headline just backing up what this clown Bridgen has said. Let me get the article. Oh, there it is. So all these things don't happen on their own. I'm going to play him again, actually, because it's so...
The European Union are desperately seeking to avoid is the good people of the Republic of Ireland, who are still in the European Union, looking across a virtual border into the Northern Ireland, a land of milk and honey, where we've got free trade deals with countries around.
So we're supposed to... So what he's saying, think about this, what he's saying is the people in the Republic of Ireland were the health outcomes... wages are higher, pay is higher. They're part of the biggest single market on the planet, whereas the UK is not. Northern Ireland is one of the poorest parts of Europe. All our outcomes are pretty shit. You know, you look at anything in the WHO and the UNICEF, Oxfam, and Northern Ireland is up there with being one of the poorest places in Europe. And this clown is saying that the people of the Republic of Ireland are going to be looking across the border to the land of milk and honey that is Northern Ireland. Now, I love Northern Ireland. I love Ireland. I love where I live. I love this place. No one in the Republic of Ireland looks across the border and thinks it's the land of milk and honey. No one. Maybe one, but I don't know who it is. This is pathetic. And this is the other thing. That this man, we're supposed to believe that this Tory pig, I hate Tories, this Tory pig gives one single fuck about the people of Ireland, north or south. He doesn't give a shit about the people in his own country. He certainly doesn't give a shit about the people in this one. And that's one of the things that's led me this past few years to become more outspoken and more animated in the United Ireland debate that needs to happen. But I've always been what I would call in the past a small N nationalist. I wanted to see a united Ireland. The thing that finally tipped me over the edge into doing like this podcast, for example, and just trying to point out what I see as being the ridiculousness of the British state, the United Kingdom as a thing, is ridiculous. It's listening to people like this just lie and lie and lie and lie. And by the way, I'm not a fool. I know we've got our own liars. I know we've got our own assholes here too. But my point is this: there's fuck all I can do about this cunt. I can't vote. My votes mean nothing. This guy can just lie his fucking hole off and feather his own nest, which is what they do. And there's nothing I can do about it. And meanwhile, I watch this part of my country having some of the worst prospects in Europe. And it's listening to people like that and seeing there's a rise with young people across the world, but I'm talking about here in Ireland now. Young people are turning more and more to the left because they've seen the right and the centre fail them. The neoliberals, the capitalists, the conservatives, the right wing, it's failed them. They've seen it, they know it, they know that they've got, they're not going to enjoy the benefits of being a member of one of the richest countries in the world, or being a citizen of one of the richest countries in the world. They're not going to enjoy the benefits, the same benefits that their very parents did enjoy. Free, cradle to grave, welfare state, job for life, free education, and all that stuff. And by the way, I always crack myself when I say that. Free education. It's not a free education. It's not free healthcare. It's paid for. It's paid for by you. Paid for by. It's just all we're deciding to do is what we're going to do with our taxes. And I've got a great video about that later on. I just realised that I forgot to fucking download it. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to do this because it's rather lovely. And so I'm going to, yeah. So.
But are you a socialist? I'm not.
So it's actually a little video of Carl Sagan. I don't know what he was, an astronomer. I guess he was an astronomer of some sort, an American chap, very famous in his day. A physicist. I think he was a physicist. So I'm going to play this for you later on because it is really cool. And let me just grab this, copy here, open up. If I was better prepared, I wouldn't be doing this. I would have this ready for you, but I'm not, pretty poorly prepared. So, but anyway, so there we go. I got that. That's good. So, listening to people like this clown and watching the the assassination of people like Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I know Jeremy Corbyn wasn't a great orator. But I personally don't care about that stuff. I'm beyond that. I'm beyond the rhetoric. I'm beyond the beyond the presentation, which is something that the political game depends upon, is the melodrama. I'm beyond it, and Jeremy Corbyn wasn't good at it and didn't give two fucks about it. But we watched him be assassinated, and with him, any again, don't know what happened. All seems fine though. So yeah, so I was talking about that assassination of Jeremy Corbyn. So that assassination of him, it symbolised for everybody, not just me, of course, the death of the left in the UK, whereas Jeremy Corbyn was a great hope. And I could see if Jeremy Corbyn and his centre-left, just left of centre politics, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was much more of a socialist than his policies, but the Labour Party manifesto of 2018 was fucking fabulous. And if he'd have been able to enact even half of that, the UK would have been a completely different landscape. Now, the press would have assassinated him regardless. They would have blamed him for everything, as they do. But with an educated remember we were saying last week what was essential is for democracy to work, the population must be educated in politics and know what they're talking about. And we don't have that. But if the Labour Party had been, I mean, you're talking about 600,000 plus members, biggest political party in the world outside of the Chinese communists. But if he had have won that election, either of the two, we would have been looking at a different landscape. Then you'd have been dealing with a more empathetic British socialism, and that would have led through to, I think, with Ireland, we probably would have got a border poll, but I don't know how successful that would have been. I mean, I'm being real here, because Labour would have spent and invested in the communities of the UK, and Northern Ireland would have seen a certain amount of that spend. So then whenever you go and ask, do you want a border? Do you want a united Ireland and a border poll? The answer might have come back no. Whereas under the Tories, perversely enough, I can see it coming back yes, because they're cartoonishly evil, and they obviously don't give a damn about us. So it's kind of it's a bit mixed up. You know what I mean? I would have loved to have seen Jeremy Corbyn win, because I think it would have been better just for people, all people. But I don't know if it would have been better for a united Ireland. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. So watching him get assassinated was the end of it for me. Well, I was over it, but I was well beyond it by then. But I was well into wanting a united Ireland. But let's listen to more what this fucking half-wit has to say.
Which is the Republic of Ireland's largest trading partner, that they can't join into, because what they know is that the Republic of Ireland will be leaving the European Union very, very quickly. Even faster, if the EU enforce a hard border.
So you believe the Republic of Ireland is going to leave the EU?
If we get out of the European Union, we can do free trade deals. It will be irresistible for lots of reasons.
For lots of reasons, none of which I'm going to name here today. Do you know, that's such a shit interview and such a great demonstration of our political discourse in the public forum, that journalist, so-called journalist, can't challenge him on what he's just said. He is Republic of Ireland is going to leave the EU because it's going to be irresistible when they see the land of milk and honey in the north of Ireland. Ha! Ha! Hilarious. Not challenged. And for the benefits are going to be obvious. There are going to be many reasons. Well, name one. He doesn't even ask him. I mean, a fucking child could trip this clown up. So, there we go. So, let's not forget. Remember this from last week?
Oftentimes I hear people talking about
Bonnie
Ireland
Greer?
as if this country owns Ireland. Ireland owes this country nothing. Ireland owes this country no concessions. It owes it no quarter. It owes it nothing. The third thing that I would add too is that the Good Friday Agreement, in spite of its rather benign name, the Good Friday Agreement is a truce. And it's a truce because the United States of America and the EU sat down with this country to make it happen. We have to be much more serious about this. And the third thing I want to say is that the United States is Irish. And if anybody thinks that they're going to get a deal through and have a relationship, a trade relationship with the United States that shafts Ireland, you got another thing coming. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm from Chicago. That's where I was born. And you know what we do on St. Patrick's Day? We dye the river green. People are very serious about Ireland and the United States. Don't mess with it. Don't make it look bad.
Right? So that was Bonnie Greer in, again, 2018 also. And this is a response to this Bridgine kit and coming out with this nonsense. This is all a response to breaking the law in a limited and specific way, and then the US Senate, the Congress, the Speaker of the House, the leader of the Democrats, the lead, Joe Biden himself, coming out and saying, if you fuck with Ireland, we're going to fuck with you. Just don't do it. That's what this Bridgine kit is. That's why he's been and if you look at the responses over the course of Brexit this past 4 or 5 years, whenever someone points out the extremely obvious or the truth, the response is not to deal with the truth, but to go further into fantasy land. And this is what we're dealing with here. These people are talking complete shite all the fucking time. And they always have been. It's absolutely staggering. And they double down. They all double down. Look at it's Trump does it. But we're not worried about, we're not talking about him. We're talking about the British government. So all these cats, all these characters, whenever they say something that is wrong, they obfuscate, they ignore, ultimately they will double down and lie. Like that Bridgine character saying Ireland is going to leave the EU. There's about as much chance of Ireland leaving the EU as I have of becoming the first paddy on the moon. And that's the absolute truth of it. There's no chance of it happening. And the journalist doesn't even fucking question him. Doesn't even question him. Just lets him go on, lie, it's propaganda, leave the studio, go get the makeup girl, take his makeup off and give him a cup of tea and send him home. That's insane. You're talking about the future of your country here, for fuck's sake. So that was... So I showed you that. The Irish Times headline, right? More than 90% of Irish people want to stay in the EU, the poll reveals, right? So at the same time that Mark Bridgine dickhead was talking his absolute shite on Sky News. Let me see if I can find this. Now, the seal land of milk and honey, that is such fucking horseshit. So, this is a headline from the Daily Express again. They have been very busy with this nonsense. Let me see if I can pull this one up for you just on the screen. For those of you watching, Daily Express. There it is. So, Irexit, is that how that's pronounced? Ireland exit, like Britain exit. EU nightmare as Irish politicians draw up plan to leave Brussels bullies. Now, I googled the Daily Express Irexit, or Daily Express Ireland leaving EU, and it is just, the whole front page is just the same shite that they poured in the ears of the English for 40 fucking years, but replace Britain with Ireland. That's all they did. And all these Brussels bullies, all that language that they were able to propagandize people into voting against their own economic interests. And by the way, I'm going to say this. I don't know how Brexit's going to go. No one does, right? But this is my point. And it's always been my point. And this is it as well. I hope it goes well for Britain. I really do. I can't see it, but I hope it does. I hope I'm completely wrong. But this was always my point about Brexit. Brexit should never have been conducted until people knew what Brexit meant. Is that not? That's not an extreme position, is it? That's not outrageous. That's not insanity. What is Brexit? No one. They're still arguing about what it is 3 years after the fucking vote. That was always my thing. It's okay if the people of Britain want to have a vote to leave the European Union. The people of Britain should have a vote to leave the European Union. But it's not unfair or unrealistic to expect the politicians who are leading this to describe what Brexit is going into the vote, so you know what you're voting for. You don't want bendy bananas or EU changing our laws or immigration policies and all that was never explained that Britain always had control over all of those things. I can't go and live in Holland. That's freedom of movement thing. I can't go and live in Holland without visible means of support. Or Belgium. But Britain chose not to use those same EU regulations. Britain chose not to do that, and then complains that the EU is flooding England full of immigrants. But there's laws and legislations that they can put in place that they chose not to. Consecutive governments of both parties or both traditions. So here we go. I'll read this article out to you. So Irexit, EU nightmare as Irish politicians draw up plan to leave Brussels bullies. Every single fucking word of that is a complete lie. That's the headline. So leading Irish, we do hear who leading Irish political figures are. So leading Irish political figures have drawn up a plan that would see Ireland follow Britain by leaving Brussels bullies and quitting the European Union. Let me tell you this. Ireland's days of following Britain are over. Britain have shown themselves to be incompetent. Not that long ago, Ireland always looked to Britain. What Britain would do, Ireland would probably follow closely behind. Not anymore. And this COVID, the Brexit and this COVID debacle have drawn a line under that relationship. It's over. So Ireland is watching the Brexit process unfold as an opportunity. Sorry, this is a headline from last Thursday, October the 1st. So this is recent. So Ireland is watching the Brexit process unfold as an opportunity to learn how to make a swift exit from the EU, according to the leading Irish diplomat Ray Bassett. Leading Irish, right, okay. The former Irish ambassador and Good Friday Agreement delegate has said it is now time for Ireland to leave the Brussels-led bloc. Dr. Bassett said that the EU bullies had the hallmarks of an empire, and he urged Ireland to shift its trade towards US, Canada and UK instead of EU. It is unbelievable that it has the hallmarks of empire. Ireland, who was crippled, who has been crippled for hundreds of years by the yoke of the British Empire. Our people have starved our people to death. And that they would complain about someone else's empire when every major political figure in the British establishment is exactly a child of empire. Exactly a child of empire. Unbelievable. Speaking with the Irish Freedom Party, I'm going to explain to you who they are in a second. I'd never heard of them until I started to do this, get this together for you. Speaking with the Irish Freedom Party, Dr. Bassett said, I don't think Ireland would want to go through the same process as the UK if they were to leave the EU. I don't think the EU would want to either. We have to express our long-term aspirations. I would never see a role for the European Court of Justice in any country that left the EU. It is imperial, not impartial. The EU has all the hallmarks of an empire which bullies its local neighbours. Jesus fucking Christ. I don't think the WTO terms is as much of an option to Ireland as it is to the UK. Right? I listened to an interview from the ex-head of the WTO it was on British TV. Why it didn't go viral, I have no idea. But he said that Britain choosing to go to WTO rules was like leaving the Premier League to join the third division. He said you'd be the only country in the world that doesn't have a trade deal with any other country in the world. Uganda would have more trade deals. The Congo would have more trade deals. Third world countries would have more trade deals with other countries than the UK. So the distinguished Irish diplomat said, we need to retain membership of the EEA, the European Economic Area, for some years so that we can do what Norway does. Norway opts in and out of policies and contributes an awful lot less to the EU budget. The populations of Norway... So that would... So I believe we will end up much more with Canada, the United States and Britain, an Anglophone area. It is where people go. It is where our investment goes normally. Dr. Bassett wrote a book, right, okay. So this guy wants us to partner up with the UK, the US and Canada because we speak English. It's not a reason to do fucking anything. Right? So, stay with me. Stay with me. Get rid of a few things here. So who are the Irish Freedom Party? Now, again, I'm going to reference Naomi O'Leary. Naomi O'Leary she was talking, when she was talking about this Brexit bubble, this Westminster bubble, she referenced there's a certain little group of MEPs that they vote together. They're far right, and there's 47 of them. Right? We hear this. So the Irish Freedom Party is a minor right-wing, hard Eurosceptic political party in Ireland. Launched in 2018, it advocates Irish withdrawal from the European Union. The party has no representation at local or national level. Right? So they have no delegates, they've no MEPs, no MPs. When I say they caucus with that hard right MEP crowd. So here, where do you hear this? This is the ideology. Just there's a wee cable blocking the thing. Aside from advocating an exit from the EU, the party states that it is a patriotic party which is pro-nationalist and supportive of stable families and pro-creation. So that means it's against abortion and divorce. The party has published policies in favour of reduced government spending, lower tax, freedom of speech and association, and in opposition to the carbon tax. So they don't believe in global warming. They don't believe in governing. They're hard right. You know what they are, right? It advocates independence from either London or Brussels, desiring to leave the EU and reunify Ireland by consent. It advocates zero tolerance to tolerance of corruption and the separation of powers in the state. Some commentators have linked the party leader Herman Kelly with alt-right ideologies, pointing to a recorded discussion with Kelly had in 2018 with far-right activist and British National Party member Jim Dawson. In the video, Kelly said the first thing they want to do is kill Irish kids and they want to replace them with every nationality who wants to come into our country, a statement which several news outlets associated with the Great Replacement Conspiracy Theory. What is the Great Replacement Conspiracy Theory? The Great Replacement Conspiracy Theory is a white nationalist far-right conspiracy theory which states with the complicity or cooperation of replacist elites, the white population, as well as it actually comes from France originally, as well as the white European population at large, is being progressively replaced with non-European peoples, specifically Arab, Berber, Sub-Saharan Muslim populations from Africa and the Middle East, through mass migration, demographic growth, and a European drop in birth rate. Right, so you know what that is? That's the Great Replacement Theory, and this Herman Kelly cat is he's spoke to that. So another just a little bit in the Irish Freedom Party. Kelly is a former teacher journalist who was a director of communications for the European Freedom and Direct Democracy. Who is Europe of Freedom and Direct Democracy? This is this group that'll caucus together within the European Parliament that Naomi O'Leary talks about. There's 47 of them, yep. And they're hard right, and they're all Eurosceptic. Now, Bulgaria has one of these guys, and Italy has one of these guys, and Holland has one of these, and the UK has 24 of them. The vast, more than half of the people in this group that caucus together all come from the UK. So who are they? The European Freedom and Direct Democracy was a Eurosceptic populist political group in the European Parliament. The EFDD is what they're referred to as for shorthand. Was a continuation for the 8th European Parliament. It was one of the 7 political groups that was opposed to European integration. 24 out of its 47 MPs were from the UK, representing the UK Independence Party. Its president was British politician Nigel Farage, who was first elected for the UK Independence Party, then became an independent before becoming the leader of the Brexit Party. David Borrelli of the Italian Five Star Movements was co-president. He had to resign the co-presidency after a failed attempt. So, Five Star Movement, who are they? They're hard right Italian proto-fascist group. So, back to this article. Listen how this is. So this is this article from the Daily Express. Right? Bear in mind what I've just told you. Leading Irish political figures have drawn up plans that would see Ireland leave the EU, follow Britain. And this is what these publications did to the English for 40 years, and now they're doing it over here. This is an English headline, but these papers, so-called newspapers, are published in Ireland, and there are Irish versions of them, which is disgusting. They shouldn't be fucking allowed anywhere near us. But there you go. So there's that. So do you see what you get? What you get where I'm coming from with all of this stuff? About that information that I got for you about the European Freedom Party, the European Freedom Direct Democracy, whatever the fuck they're called, and the Irish Freedom Party, all come from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is okay. It has its issues, especially when it comes to politics. So, these people are aligned with the likes of Nigel Farage and these Bridgines and not Bridgine. I keep calling him Bridgine as if he's Irish. Andrew Bridgine. So this is them planting the seeds. They'll do this for 30 or 40 years. This is what they did in England. You know, it's insidious, and they take their time and they play the long game, and they're trying to do it here too. So the idea that us in Ireland, I mean, we clearly don't want to go. I mean, everybody in Northern Ireland wants to stay better connected to the EU and Ireland, the Republic. And we want away from the British. At least half of us want away from the British. And I'd say half of the other half are seriously thinking about it. But anyway, that's another thing. So a part of the problem that we have at the minute, I'm going to lead into another article now. A part of this whole thing with coronavirus, I don't really want to talk about coronavirus because I'm not an expert. As I said, if you listen to my podcast, I just listen to what the experts the doctors, what the medical advice is. That's where I get it from. I take, unless politicians are doing the same thing, I take what they say with a pinch of salt as well. I personally, my own feelings about the whole thing, I am furious about that we're about to go in this. We're looking at second lockdown, or a version of it. We could have dealt with this properly. I said this the first time around. We could have dealt with this properly. We could have been reopened. Look at New Zealand and all this. Countries like New Zealand, Australia, Cambodia, Vietnam, China. They're all practically COVID free. The rugby stadiums are back open in New Zealand. 20,000 people going to watch matches. We're about to go back into second fucking lockdown. So, recently, this past few days. So, this past few days, it's broken that in England, they have Public Health England, PHE it's called, and they've been using, here's the headline from The Guardian: COVID, how XL may have caused loss of 16,000 test results in England. Now, the problem with that is that, it's a big problem, obviously. You probably don't need me to explain, but they lost the test results, so the people weren't informed that they were probably some people were walking around with COVID, giving it to other people. So people may have died. This is why this is serious. So, and the reason why is because of they were using Microsoft's Excel spreadsheet software, right? Now, bear in mind that the British government have spent upwards of, I don't know, I've heard two figures, I don't know which is true, but the lower figure is 11 million and the higher figure is 31 million on developing an app, which doesn't work. Whereas the Irish government developed one for €750,000. It was the most successful COVID track and trace app on the planet, and they give it away to the Linux Foundation for free, so anyone else can use it as well. And other governments, even states and counties in America and stuff, have taken this app and they just put their own skin on it, and away they go, and it works. So the incompetence of the British government, who don't believe in governing. So a 1 million row limit on Microsoft's Excel spreadsheet software may have led to Public Health England misplacing 16,000 COVID results. Means 50,000 potentially infectious people may have been missed by contact tracers and not told to self-isolate. And simply because there's a 1 million row limit on Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. Now, I don't use any of that software. I'm sure, I don't know what that is, but, I'm aware of what it is, but I don't, I can't really talk to that beyond this headline. But this is, for me, it's a signature of the incompetence of who we're being governed by. And this is a part of it. These people don't believe, this is what I keep saying, these people don't believe in governing. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in it. All the money, hundreds and hundreds of millions have gone to their cronies, and literally their cronies. It's corruption at its worst. No one's going to get sacked. Remember what I keep saying? You can lie, you can cheat, you can steal, you can even kill, as long as you do it at the behest of the establishment. Don't get caught, and if you do get caught, keep your mouth shut. The worst thing that's ever going to happen to you is you'll get promoted sidewards. Worst thing. Keep your mouth shut and be a good little boy, you'll get promoted upwards. Priti Patel is the perfect example of that. So, when it comes to our current fucking situation with COVID, we could have been out of this by now. And now we're looking at going back into a second lockdown, or, as I said, a version of it. We're not coming out of this. I'm a musician. I don't think I'm going to be gigging before next summer. Because, am I being pessimistic? No, I'm being realistic. I'm looking at the incompetency of the government. And by the way, the Irish government have fucked their response up as well. But it's all down to one thing. feeding the capitalists, feed the feeding frenzy to get the businesses open, the lobbying done by all these these businesses to get the economy back opened again. These people call themselves the stewards of the economy. That's all they give a fuck about, and they've all they've done is fuck it up. But for them, it's a complete success because they cream public money off to themselves. These Sercos and G4Ss and all these multinational companies that seem to me to just lumber from one fucking disaster to the next. And they don't seem to, very rarely they ever get punished. I read you an article a few weeks ago about one of the companies getting fined because of they had lied to an investigation. But that's rare. And the fine never matches what the profit. So they're almost incentivized to cheat and steal and just be incompetent, because the more competent they are, the less of the contract money they have to put into the project. They just get to keep it. It goes to shareholders and to stock buybacks and CEO bonuses. So this is when it comes to, we're about to hit our second lock. We're about to hit, as I said, a version of a second lockdown. I don't think we're going to go into a second lockdown, but I've heard here locally the schools are going to close down for 3 weeks. Cinemas are being closed down from Thursday. Things like that. I think so. These things are going to have to be paid for. Who's going to pay for them? Well, the billionaires, of course. The people with the fucking money. There's no point in going to the people that don't have any money, is there? Where do you get money from? People have got the money. What is a billionaire? A billionaire is nothing but a Tolkien dragon sleeping on a pile of golden rubies that someone else has dug up from the ground. That's what it is, and that's why it's immoral. There should be no such thing as a fucking billionaire. They should all be fired into space on these imaginary rockets that they all see.
This is undoubtedly going to be the worst recession in my generation's lifetime. It could be the worst recession in 3 centuries.
From Grace Blakely. She is an academic, an economist, and an author. And I follow her closely on the Vara Media and Double Down News. She's brilliant. And she's one of these cats that gets on sort of mainstream news every now and again, and generally, makes a good show of herself because she's good at presenting her argument, and she's very intelligent. So have a little listen to this for a couple of minutes.
This is undoubtedly going to be the worst recession in my generation's lifetime. It could be the worst recession in 3 centuries. We're going to start to see levels of unemployment that we definitely haven't seen since the 1980s. We're going to see a scale of suffering that is going to be absolutely huge. So, for example, the 2008 financial crisis, that created huge and widespread damage across the whole of the economy. But this crisis is, if anything, going to be worse for some of the worst off people in our country. And that's because the risks of this pandemic are just so individualized. We have seen how capitalist states, how the British state works in the interests of the wealthiest in society as this crisis has progressed. Money and cash were immediately directed towards businesses. Money was immediately pumped into financial markets. And it was only after that that the government started thinking, right, we need to actually think about workers, we need to think about small businesses, we need to think about tenants. And even then, it was too little, too late. At the same time, we've got these huge international monopolies that are growing very, very wealthy on the back of what is going on in the economy at the moment. Think about the way that the share prices of Amazon, Facebook, Apple have soared throughout this pandemic. It is absolutely no surprise that our politicians consistently favour big businesses over working people, given that there is this revolving door between British politics and the private sector. Priti Patel was paid £1,000 an hour to work for a firm that provided services to the Home Office, where she now works. Sajid Javid has gone from being Chancellor to go and work for JP Morgan, a huge investment bank. Tony Blair has made hundreds of thousands of pounds from speaking fees and consulting engagements since he stepped down as Prime Minister.
Yeah, I like that.
And that isn't just a kind of glitch in the system. It's not just an extreme example of very deep-seated corruption. It is corruption, but it's integral to the way that capitalism works. This is what capitalist states do. They exist in order to support the interests of big businesses, of finance, of the very, very wealthy. We're often told that the wealthy are also the wealth creators, but actually, when you look at the way, particularly the British economy works, that simply isn't true. Some of the wealthiest people in our society gain their income, gain their wealth at the expense of everyone else. They're the massive landlords who don't really create anything new. They just buy up property en masse and charge everyone else for using it. They're the financial executives who make huge amounts.
See, this is a part of the problem. This is what I was saying about, what we were saying last week, that it's for a functioning democracy to work, you need to have an educated population. And why I mention that with regards to this is we've been educated to believe that billionaires deserve everything that they have, that they created all that wealth. I know I don't. I'm going to use characters when I talk about these people. I'm going to talk about people like Jeff Bezos because he is the richest man in the world, but there's I don't know, almost 700 billionaires on the planet, but he's the richest of them. But he's the reason that he's easy to reference is because he's so visible, because his corporation is absolutely fucking everywhere. The idea that man has created that wealth, if you believe that, you've been propagandized over the course of your life. You need to literally understand a little bit about Marxian theory, about labor theory, about where value comes from. Someone makes a product. Someone, say someone has a great idea. That absolutely, they should profit from that, and that's good. But whenever there's an unfair sharing of the profit, so the person that made the product is working in poverty, whilst the person that owns the means of production is living in a palace. That's unfair. Because without the person working in the factory to make the product, there is no product. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have someone to make it, you've got nothing. There's no such thing as unskilled labour. That's propaganda. There's no such thing as unskilled labour. So, and this is the thing. We've gone so far. We're almost going back into the Gilded Age, where the difference between the poor and the rich, that wealth gap is so extreme now. It's looking like the Gilded Age, like the age of kings, and that's purely down to greed. Jeff Bezos does not need that money. Bill Gates does not need that money. Apple does not need that money. Microsoft, Exxon, BP, they do not need that money. They don't need it. They can't spend it. They don't pay a tax. So you need, I'm sort of going off a wee bit on one, but you need to understand the value of labour. Your labour, Eugene Debs, the great American socialist politician from back in the 1920s, 1930s, says all the working man has to do to beat the rich is to keep his hands in his pockets. That's Marxian theory, put in a very concise and neat little package. Don't forget about that. That's the point of the labour unions, the wobblies. That's the point. That we understand that you and your own are going to be exploited, but us together are unexploitable. If you remember anything about it, just remember that. All the working class has to do to beat the rich is to keep his hands in his pockets. Because without that man digging the field, digging in the mine, engineer, making the product in the factory, there's nothing. There is no economy. But if you believe the opposite, you've been propagandized over the course of your life to believe we're the elite. Remember what we were saying about the elite? I don't use that word in that context. These people are not elite. They're just rich and fucking greedy bastards with it. Tolkien dragons sleeping on piles of gold and rubies. That's what they are, hoarding their wealth. Fuck them.
Of money from interests and fees. And on top of that, they're largely the people who don't pay as much tax as everyone else. There are so many accountants, tax advisors who are paid huge amounts of money to adopt all sorts of schemes that allow them to minimize their tax obligations, while everyone else is under PAYE or is paying national insurance, and that money is deducted from them automatically every month. By far the most tax comes from ordinary people. Completely avoiding any discussion of wealth taxation is absurd. Clearly, a wealth tax needs to be part of our response to this crisis. Keir Starmer is adopting a tactic that many Labour politicians have adopted throughout the decades. He is becoming what Tony Benn called a weather vane rather than a signpost. He is doing what he thinks is in line with popular opinion as told to him by focus groups, by surveys or whatever. And he believes that challenging the government would be a move that would be too political, that might put people off voting for Labour.
Whatever measure the government takes, we will support it.
Oh.
The issue is that when you get crises as deep as the one that we are in now, people are looking for leadership. People want signposts.
The Prime Minister usually told us as opposition leaders what he's going to do.
What would you do? Basically, he's saying, not my circus, not my monkey. You know, we want to know what you do, not what the Prime Minister would do. We already know that he just balls it up. We want to know what you, Keir Starmer, do. It's confusing me now. I thought he was Labour.
We have a very easy question to answer here, which is who should be made to clean up the costs of this crisis. This doesn't have to be like 2008 2.0. We don't have to spend the next decade as another lost decade. We have an opportunity here to rebuild our economy in an entirely different way. Think about how the...
And this is the point, what we were saying earlier on about young people. Young people are turning to the left because they know that the centre and the right have made their futures more precarious than they should be. But meanwhile, they're being told to celebrate billionaires, and they're looking and they understand. They go, well, no, that doesn't make any fucking sense. I lucky enough, I've got a couple of daughters, and they've got some friends, and my eldest girl, she has a boyfriend. She lives up in Belfast there, and I get to meet these young people every now and again, and I get to talk to them, and they're all very politically savvy. They're all very aware, and they're all very left. So, that's why I have hope for the future, because of them. But so here's a little bit about the stock market, and about how over the course of this COVID thing, the stock market has gone up. These companies have made more money.
Stock prices of the big tech companies have increased so much. Think about the masses of money that has been channeled into private corporations. Those are the people who should be paying for the costs of this crisis, not working people who have been out there every day, sacrificing their health, sacrificing their lives sometimes to keep our economy going. There is a level of anger against our political elites that is at the moment amorphous. It's not being channeled into a real powerful grassroots movement. That's probably one of the main reasons why.
But it was channeled into a grassroots movement through the Jeremy Corbyn Labour project, and then it was completely dismantled. Right? So that's what she's talking about. There is a palpable sense of, no, things are all fucked up, we need to fucking go. And they had it with the British left, within Labour, and they ruined it.
It's so important for the left to be engaging in community organising, supporting tenant strikes, to be supporting the environmental movement, Black Lives Matter, to be much more engaged in the labour movement, so that we're actually supporting people in the very real struggles that they are currently having. It's what allows people to imagine that there is a different way of organising the world, and it's what allows people to imagine that there is life beyond capitalism. In times like this, where we're facing...
There you go. That's Grace Blakely from Double Down News. You should definitely give her a follow. She's another good one. So, right, I'm going to wrap this up. So the COVID... We're back to COVID in Ireland here. So COVID in Ireland, we're about to go into a second lockdown. or as I said, a version of it, People Before Profit, who are a left-wing socialist political party here in Ireland, and they're very good. I like them very much. And they have published this document from the other day. This is the 5th of October. So zero COVID, what it means and how we get there. Now, I'm going to read this article to you. It's quite short, so bear with me, please. NPHET, NFET, which is a national, the sort of the public health virus dealing with people in Ireland. So, recommendation that we move on to level 5 restrictions as a result of months of government failures on COVID. The Irish government initially did very, very well. And through pressure from lobbying groups to get the economy back opened, we've now seen our numbers rise to fucking just as bad as they've ever been. So they caved in. Here we go. They caved into business interests and prematurely lifted restrictions. They allowed the second wave to be seeded by failing to keep meat plant workers safe. It was a big issue here in Ireland. They failed to invest in a permanent mass testing infrastructure that could help to test and trace every case. They packed students into overcrowded classrooms and left teachers and parents to fend for themselves, even now as hospitalisations begin to rise. Once again, they refuse to take the necessary action to keep people safe. The government's living with COVID strategy, which is exactly the same as the fucking Tories' herd immunity strategy, is doomed to failure. It means we must go repeatedly in and out of lockdown in order to prevent our hospitals from becoming overwhelmed. It means that many deaths spread out over a long period of time. It means many more people will suffer the effects of long COVID. Long-term health effects such as damage to the heart, lungs, kidney, brain, as well as fatigue, a racing heartbeat, shortness of breath, aching joints and brain fog. It will mean prolonging this ordeal and compounding the existing mental health crisis. All true. The let-it-rip approach the far right are calling for would be even worse. It would be almost certainly mean our hospitals would be overwhelmed by the number of admissions to hospitals and the ICU, and it would mean forcing doctors to make decisions about who gets a ventilator, as happened in Italy at the beginning of the crisis. And there is no guarantee we would have herd immunity by the end of this death drive. Countries like Brazil and Sweden that follow that strategy still show no signs of herd immunity, and cases in those countries are beginning to rise once again. So, I agree with every fucking word of that. What's the alternative? A zero COVID policy is the only strategy that provides a way out. It does not mean we reach absolute zero in terms of cases, but it means crushing the virus to the point where we can test, trace and isolate every single case that arises, stopping the spread of the virus. Both Micheál Martin's government and the Northern Executive want to present this strategy as pie in the sky. But the reality is that Australia, China, New Zealand, Taiwan, Thailand and Vietnam have all managed to achieve zero COVID and are now largely living without restrictions. How could we achieve zero COVID in Ireland? Here we go. We need to implement level 5 restrictions recommended, but this will not be enough. People must be supported through this pandemic. We need a total restoration of the PUP, more support. The PUP, I don't know what PUP. I think that's the pandemic payment. Oh, okay. So more support for small businesses and a massive increase in funding for mental health support. What do these measures in place? Now here's what they're suggesting. This is what we need to do. Point 1, massive investment to a permanent public testing infrastructure. Test times to be reduced to 24 hours. Point 2, unannounced workplace inspections. Workplaces who put workers at risk to be closed down and fined. Private hospitals to be brought into public ownership, more health workers to be hired on full-time permanent contracts, pay increases and hazard pay for frontline workers, more teachers to be hired, classroom space to be created and genuine protections for teachers and students. If schools cannot be kept safe, they must be closed until the virus is crushed. Point 5, at the end of direct provision, an end to direct provision, safe own door accommodation to be found for asylum seekers and those living in emergency accommodation. In Ireland, we have this, in the Republic of Ireland, direct provision is the policy in place to take care of asylum seekers, and it's a fucking disaster. So point 6, a ban on non-essential travel, and anyone who is travelling into Ireland to be tested. Once the virus is crushed, we can add more test capacity at the airports and open travel up to countries that have low case numbers. An all-Ireland strategy that harmonises public health measures, testing systems and health systems across the 32 counties. Right? We could have eliminated this virus if Varadkar and the Northern Executive had not lifted restrictions too early back in June. True. We have now faced a major setback, and models could predict that we could eliminate the virus by December or January if we implement a zero COVID policy. Failure to do so will mean having to endure this virus indefinitely, well into 21 and probably 22 as well. Zero COVID is the light at the end of the tunnel. I fully support that. Fully support that by people before profit. It has to be a zero COVID strategy. And this is what fucking confuses the shit clean out of me. Our centre-right and right-wing governments consider themselves to be the most suitable stewards of the economy, but everything that they do continues to fuck up the economy. The real economy, the economy of the people, not the economy of the stock market. The stock market can go up and down and you won't notice a difference. Rishi Sunak, the British Chancellor, is about that pandemic payment, the furlough scheme, is going down instead of 80%, now going down to 20%. That's the same as not paying anybody anything at all. And what you're going to see is 20% is going to be paid by the government, the rest to be made up by the employer. The employer is going to let those people go. So you're going to see a wave of unemployment. And people put onto the universal credit scheme, which is a fucking nightmare. So, listen, I'm going to say this. Yous are fucking lucky I'm not in charge. You see, if I was in charge, honestly, I said it right from the very start. We need to hit this hard back in February, March, and you're getting advice from the people that knew, because there was countries ahead of us that were giving us advice, saying, right, we did this wrong, we did that wrong. If you do this will work for you. And we didn't take any of their advice. The British government got even worse than the Irish. But if I was honest to God, I would, all this stuff about masks, it's not recommendations, it's fucking law. It'd be law. Wear a mask. If you don't wear a mask, you're going to fucking jail. And all you fuckwits that don't believe in masks, you'd be put on a fucking ship off the coast of fucking Newry. And that would be your fate if I was in charge. I'm not joking. You're walking around with a deadly fucking weapon in your mouth, potentially. You can cause someone's death. I don't care that you don't believe. I do. And the science backs me up. You're listening to some fucker ranting into their phone in a fucking outside of McDonald's in Florida. What the fuck? Do your own research. I'm a sheeple. Fuck you. I don't need to do my own research. There are people that do that for me. They're called scientists. They went to school for 10 fucking years so that they could do their research and present it to me, and then I should take their advice. Unfucking believable. I got really pissed off about this yesterday. When I seen the numbers, I checked it out, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It just annoyed me. We've completely fucked this up. I've got members of my own family that don't believe in this. Quite a few, well, not quite a few of them, and I'm not going to fall out with them or anything childish like that, but I feel like fucking punching them sometimes. But anyway, there we go. So I'm going to call this. This has been a long one again. So, yeah. Listen, I just wanted to make sure I got something out to you for Wednesday. Like I said, I've got no record recommends. I haven't had time. I am going to do this again, though. This book, The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists, the graphic novel by Sophie and Scarlett Rickard. You need to buy that. That's your homework for next week. So yeah. So there we go. All done. All done. All away now. Bye bye.